Hey, welcome to EP Live. It is great to see you here today. Hello to everybody that is actually live with us. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a treat for you. Spidey and I are going to have some fun talking with Chris Baker very soon. But we've got to get to the rundown, and we've got to give a big special shout out to one of our recent sponsors, Greg Robinson. Thank you so much. You have found the latest in everything cool, so let's get started with your rundown. The nominees for the 90th Academy Awards have been announced, and big genre films are doing surprisingly well. This morning, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences announced the official list of nominees for this year's Oscars. Surprisingly, Guillermo del Toro's fishy romance movie, The Shape of Water, leads the pack with an impressive 13 nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Lead Actress for Sally Hawkins. The film is amazing, but this still comes as a surprise because Academy voters typically snub genre movies like this, often preferring more traditional kinds of romances. This just makes my heart sing. I'm so happy that he's getting the recognition he deserves. This guy has built an incredible history of fantastic movies for us, but The Shape of Water is superb. It's his best work, and you guys definitely have to see this. This Oscar push is going to mean, tons of attention on this deserved movie. Congrats to Guillermo del Toro. Another big film doing surprisingly well is Jordan Peele's horror movie, Get Out, which has picked up 4 nominations: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, and Best Lead Actor for star Daniel Kaluuya. Get Out seemed to have everything going against it. Not only do horror movies never get nominated, but the predominantly white Academy voters have overlooked similar movies with African-American casts in the past. Pretty good for a first-time director, and it feels like everybody's kind of waking up on the Academy there, which is fantastic. Here's one that's not too big of a surprise. It's Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. It's picked up 8 nominations, including Best Director. This is actually Nolan's first time being nominated for the award, having been snubbed for The Dark Knight back in 2008. That's a surprise. Now, Fox and Marvel's Wolverine send-off, Logan, which has been nominated in the prestigious Best Adapted Screenplay category. This is the first superhero movie to be nominated in that category. I think it deserved a few more awards. That was absolutely outstanding, that movie, or at least nominations. Incredible film, and let's hope it gets this one, man. That would be amazing. Now, Blade Runner 2049, my favorite movie of 2017, one of the best films of the year, didn't get any of the prestigious Best Picture or Best Director categories, which is ridiculous, but it did sweep 5 of the technical categories like visual effects and sound editing. Cinematographer Roger Deakins has also been nominated. That guy, if he doesn't win, everybody's drunk, and they just have to stop the awards right there and turn to each other and say, what the hell are you thinking? Because Roger Deakins should win. And if he doesn't win, it will be a travesty. Yes, Blake agrees with me. Genre movies like Get Out and The Shape of Water did surprisingly well, but another big genre film was completely snubbed. Wonder Woman hasn't been nominated for a single award, and not just in the more prestigious categories like Best Picture and Best Director, but also in the more superhero-friendly categories. This comes as a surprise and follows a big Oscar push on the part of Warner Brothers and the part of Warner Brothers and DC. They should have at least been nominated for costumes. I mean, all of those Amazonian warrior costumes were incredible, and there were some pretty fantastic effects in that thing, too. It also could have gone for Best Adapted Screenplay, and, frankly, Patty Jenkins directed a hell of a movie there. She should have been up, man. That's crazy. 88-year-old Canadian actor Christopher Plummer has become the oldest actor to ever be nominated for an Oscar. His role in Ridley Scott's All the Money in the World earned him a Best Supporting Actor nod. And this is especially interesting because he was only added to the film at the last minute. You guys have heard this story. The role was originally played by Kevin Spacey, but he was replaced after troubling sexual assault allegations surfaced against him, with Ridley Scott reshooting his scenes with Plummer, and they did it within a few weeks of the thing having to hit theaters, which is incredible. So good on you, Christopher Plummer. Winners will be announced at the awards ceremony on Sunday, March 4th. So, of course, we'll follow up with all those winners. How do you guys feel? Do you think that people were correct in their nominations, or do you feel like some of the other movies got snubbed in a big major way? I mean, I'm reading a list here that seems to stand out. The Wonder Woman snubs don't make any sense to me. You can let us know. I know we're behind on the when I'm reading this and when you guys are seeing all this stuff, but Blake will shout them out. Now, you don't have to wait much longer to start playing the new God of War. Woo! Sony has announced that the new game, simply titled God of War, will hit the PlayStation 4 on April 20th, 2018, which I have now declared an international holiday. Okay? Everybody go home and be with their PlayStation 4s and have some quality time with their PlayStation 4s. There's no season pass or loot boxes, but there will be exclusive in-game skins for those who pre-order the game. There will also be 3 different collector's editions alongside the standard version. I don't know if you guys have ever checked out the collector's editions and behind-the-scenes stuff on previous God of War games, but they've always been spectacular, and I have reason to believe that this will be no different. I'm psyched for this. There's going to be different statues and art books and all that stuff, but I want to see the behind the scenes because building these things always crushes the teams. I can remember Cory Barlog and David Jaffe just like basically crying in their beers going, oh my God, I survived another God of War. It's amazing that Cory went back. I love this series. It's an incredible game franchise. I think that Cory and his team, and I brought it up in my conversations with Cory Barlog, they've done the right thing. I mean, they hit the peak, no pun intended, with where they could go with Kratos, and they had to kind of give him a soul. They had to give him a little bit more. You know, he had to grow, just like all of us are growing as players, and the industry is growing with its content, and this was the right way to do it. I think they could have kept going with hack and slashers forever, but if they want this series to be indelible, they needed to kind of twist and shake it all up, you know? Just like we saw with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, you know? I'm pulling that into this conversation about God of War. Sue me. So very psyched for this thing. April can't come soon enough. April 20th. Incredible. I think I'm going away during that. So before that time, then, Sony has got to create a Switch-like PlayStation 4 so I can play that on the plane. Okay? So Sony, if you're watching, come on. Rocket League players will soon be able to party with everybody they want. Well, almost everybody. Developer Psyonix has announced that cross-platform party support is coming to all versions of the game. Cross-platform multiplayer is already available, but with party support, it means that players on one platform will be able to join the party of players on another, making it easier for people to play together. At least most people. Can we guess who's not in this party? The PlayStation 4 version of the game will still only supports cross-platform play with the PC, while all the other platforms, including the Xbox One and Nintendo Switch, are able to work with any system players want. Sony has notoriously been reluctant to allow cross-platform between the PS4 and other consoles, despite the fact that it's already possible from a technical standpoint, so hopefully they come around soon. All we can do is make videos like this and tweet at them and send them emails and send them messages on our PlayStation 4s. But yeah, I posted something. This is interesting, actually. I posted something about the potential lineup of games, and God of War was one of them. On the PlayStation 4 this year, Sony could have one of its best, if not the best year it's ever had if all of these things hit, you know. I'm not going to list them all off right now, but you guys know. They've got some exclusives on the way that are, like, ridiculous. One of the comments I got is, I wish I had bought a PlayStation 4 instead of an Xbox One. And then I saw a thread between the buddy and other buddies, and this is not meant to slag Microsoft in any way, but I saw that they had chosen the Xbox path because of friends choosing Xbox paths, and then they see all of these exclusives. But this is one way that Sony could, you know, bring a little more harmony into the world, is doing a little cross-platform party play. So I want them to do that. You know, Minecraft is cross-platform between other consoles. I just think the idea that there's more ways to connect bridges in games as opposed to creating clubhouses in games and having to make allegiances in games, the better for the business, the better for everybody, and the more people start to play and chatter and talk about games and express their passion for games. That's what the games industry needs. Not like, you can't have this, nah, 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 nah. That's bullshit. That's you know, we've got to move past that. That's an old way of thinking for video games. All right, let's face it. Most video game movies are pretty terrible, but here's one that probably won't be, any better. I thought you were going in a different way, Blake. According to the Hollywood Reporter, explosion-heavy filmmaker Michael Bay, of course, is developing a big screen movie based on the Duke Nukem series. Not a moment too soon, Michael Bay, with professional wrestler John Cena in talks to play the lead role. This will be his finest performance. It will take an actor of a certain caliber to be how do you say it? Misogynistic? Yes, misogynistic douchebag that runs around and looks in the mirror and primps and shoots and kills I'm not a fan of Duke Nukem. That is also from a BS era of games that I'm glad. It was great in the time. It was funny and goofy, but yeah, nothing since has come close to being fun, and I suspect this movie will not be either. He certainly looks the part. And although he's been in movies before, it remains to be seen if he has the chops to bring the video game hero to life. Michael Bay knows how to push a button to create explosions. He's set to produce the film through his Platinum Dunes production label, although there's no word yet on who might sit in the director's chair. And I think the drum will be banged for a long time before we make a decision or we hear about who's going to be in the role of Duke Nukem. So that's our news for today. What do you guys think? We got... I'd also like to see Sony pull a move. So this is JBJ Blaze and TFA. I'd also like to see Sony pull a move similar to Xbox Play Anywhere. PlayStation Now was okay, but the input delay was and is bothersome. Yeah, I mean, I think if we're going to get into this idea of Netflix for games, it's got to be a little bit more open concept, right? This sort of locked, closed door kind of thinking is just hurting the business. It might be good for short-term gains, but in totality, and against the threat of the ubiquity of things like mobile or free-to-play games like League of Legends, the console business has got to open up, find ways to open up. And Play Now is a good idea, and Play Anywhere is a good idea, but a little bit more threading, a little bit more sort of working together. The Switch is doing so well with its unique sort of vantage point. And I don't know if that means that the Xbox and PlayStation should be thinking about something like that as well, where you're basically advertising your console experience whenever you leave the house with your Switch. And I think that is also, there's probably a lot of people that see these things on airplanes and in movie theaters and on subways, and they go, that guy's got that thing. That's amazing. I'm going to go do that. People aren't seeing that same kind of thing with Xboxes and PlayStations. It's kind of this, like, I'm going home to snuggle with my machine. There's nothing wrong with that, but you know what I've been saying. I've been saying this for 20 plus years is like, look, let's find ways to get the conversation out there. Let's tell more people that video games are awesome. Let's be inclusive. Exclusive, yeah, it's not as great as it used to be. What did Sony ever do with Gaikai? Gaikai, that's from Paul Adamson. Great question. Gaikai became PlayStation Now. They built all this streaming tech. They bought them. They pulled them in. And then they turned them into PlayStation Now. Audrion Leon says, are you thinking of considering playing Dragon Ball FighterZ? I've heard it's absolutely great. I've got a review code on the way, and I'm thinking of connecting with some folks over at Bandai Namco to have a nice chat about the game and their long-running partnership around Dragon Ball Z. I think that would be great. I'm super psyched to play that. We've got a review of Street Fighter V Arcade Edition coming up very soon on the show. If anybody else has a big question, have you noticed any questions, Blake?
Just the ones you answered.
Okay. All right, guys. John Cena in talks to be Duke Nukem. Yeah, says it all right there. Right. Rod27, perfect example, hates that Spider-Man is a PlayStation exclusive now. That is kind of crazy, right? I mean, this is a character for everyone. It's a character for the world, except if you have an Xbox One or a Nintendo Switch. It's crazy. I almost wish that, Sony would say, well, because they've got the movie, right? They've got dibs in there. I almost wish that they would say, look, we need to put this game on all the machines. I feel like that would be the right thing to do for their business, but for everybody else too. I mean, Spider-Man, just like Batman and all the Lego games and all that stuff, and we're going to talk about some of these great Spider-Man games very soon, but they should be crossing the streams. And, it's a business decision, but I feel like Yeah, that's a great example. That is an awesome example. And I don't want to dismiss exclusivity and people investing in getting their products out the way that they want to, because that's where we see some real innovation and some great leaps forward in this sort of reach to have privacy and find a way to get that stuff delivered exclusively. But it sure brings with it a lot of baggage that keeps a lot of people out. And that's been my mission with EP from the beginning, is to get people to come in and pay attention and care more and talk about this stuff more. All right, let's move on, because I want to get our guest on here. We're gonna have a fantastic conversation. But first, let's take a look at this day and everything cool. Welcome to This Day and Everything Cool for January 23rd. On this day in 1948, director John Huston's iconic film The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, starring Humphrey Bogart, opened wide in the United States, which at the time meant it played in a handful of theaters in New York and Los Angeles. It's considered to be one of the first neo-westerns, with Bogart playing not a heroic American cowboy, but a down-on-his-luck gold prospector who does some pretty terrible things in order to strike it rich in Mexico. Along with being one of the first Hollywood movies to film on location outside of the U.S., The Treasure of the Sierra Madre is memorable for several important reasons. Its dark themes and portrayal of one of America's top leading men as an anti-hero made the film much more serious and realistic than what Hollywood produced at the time, something that wouldn't become commonplace for at least another few decades. The look and feel of the movie also would inspire Western and adventure films for years to come, not the least of which, the Indiana Jones films. On this day in 1950, Richard Dean Anderson was born. The actor, best known for his work as the resourceful Angus MacGyver on MacGyver and as Jack O'Neill on various Stargate projects, became a genre entertainment favorite and spent many years in the spotlight. Anderson appeared in 214 episodes of Stargate SG-1 and went on to appear in follow-ups Stargate Atlantis, Stargate Universe, and the feature film Stargate Continuum. He got his start in the soaps and on series television like The Love Boat, and over the years accumulated many diverse credits, including playing Killian Darkwater in the original Fallout video game in 1997. Happy birthday, Mr. Anderson. January 23, 2006 was the release date of True Swing Golf for the Nintendo DS. It was one of the first golf titles to showcase the innovations that stylus-controlled gameplay could allow on Nintendo's relatively new dual-screen handheld device. Players manipulated every aspect of the game through the touchscreen, including, as the title implied, using the stylus to mirror the swing of a club. It wasn't the definitive golf video game experience by any means, but because so much care and focus was put on the DS's hardware capabilities, it became a memorable and enjoyable title for the system nonetheless. That's the way we go. We run from Stargate to golf around here. Anything is possible on Electric Playground. That's the way I like it, though. I like that sort of change up and that switch up, and lots of cool things to talk about. We've got lots of cool things to talk about right now. My guest is Chris Baker. He's been a part of the games industry for more than 2 decades with jobs at Marvel, LucasArts, and the official U.S. PlayStation Magazine, and a lot more. He's helped release more than 40 titles. He's written about hundreds of them for prominent outlets, including Rolling Stone, EGM, PSM, GameSpy, and more. He also wrote a book, so why are you just waiting around watching video game shows and playing video games? Why aren't you guys writing books? This guy wrote a book. It's called Wrong Retro Games. You Messed Up Our Comic Book Heroes. You can tell why I want to talk to this guy about Spider-Man. He's worked on tons of titles. Every Spider-Man console game from 2008 to 2014, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which I'm going to stream a little Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite at the end of the show, Lego Marvel Superheroes, Marvel Pinball, Star Wars Battlefront 2, Lego Star Wars 2. Chris Baker is here. Chris, you have had the dream career, or you are currently having the dream career in video games.
I think you're currently having the dream career in video games, Victor. But yeah, I've had a pretty great career. I'm very blessed. You left out official PlayStation Magazine. That was my big magazine that I work for, which is kind of up here.
That's awesome. Yeah. I did say it, and you have Spider-Man on the cover, and was that your review of Spider-Man?
That was my cover story back in 2002. Yeah, kind of telling the future, I guess. I don't know. I also, actually, I think that the thing that kind of brought it all together, I interviewed Mark Hamill once, who was playing Wolverine.
Yep.
So I was doing a Marvel thing for a Star Wars character, and just living the dream in a sound booth with Luke Skywalker once. That was pretty sweet.
That is awesome. Well, you worked on the other side. You worked on the side that I've been working on for my whole career, is sort of trying to peek into the curtain and see how this stuff gets made and talk to people that build all this stuff. But you actually transitioned from writing about it and talking about it to helping to bring it out into the world. What's the biggest difference there? I know there's a lot that goes into that issue, but what's the biggest difference?
I think the thing that, when I finally did kind of cross over, like when you are in the press and you're seeing all kinds of things and they're all behind closed doors and you have all this access that the general public doesn't have, you get this impression that you're seeing a lot that people don't see. Yeah. And there's just so much more than that. Like, it's just the whole process of a game going from concept to reality it's very huge. A lot of people are involved, a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Sometimes great things happen to great games, and then those happen. Sometimes, unfortunately, things get canceled along the way, whether they're good or bad. It's interesting to me, like, I've seen games get canceled that were never announced. Yeah. That I was really excited about, and I can never talk about them. But, I'm sure that happens all the time. I was just talking on Twitter to someone about there's a bunch of canceled X-Men games out there, and I'm sure there's a bunch more we don't even know about. Yeah. Because, there were a ton in the 90s that were announced that didn't come out, and I'm sure there's a lot more than that, too.
It's amazing. You had long stints at Lucas and at Marvel, and you had stints with them with Lucas before Disney got involved. Yeah. And were you with Marvel as Disney acquired Marvel?
Yeah, I joined Marvel at a great time. I joined Marvel like right before Iron Man came out. Yeah. Wow. So, I got to be there like to see all that magic happen. Like when I started there, it was a really small office on top of a Mercedes dealership. Yep. And then they moved to an actual movie studio, and then they finally moved to the Disney lot after that happened. So
where did they edit the Iron Man movie? Because we did the making of Iron Man. I think that's right. We probably worked together on all that stuff. Yeah. So I interviewed Robert Downey Jr. and Kevin Feige and Jon Favreau, but Stan Lee and other people involved with these projects too. But and I got to go and see Iron Man get cut, and there was some special effects, but it was so nondescript. Where was that?
That was a place called Tribeca, just a studio offsite. Yeah. It was completely offsite. It was like, if you go to Tribeca for the day, you're going to go hang out with Jon Favreau and Kevin Feige and all them.
It was so chill, and like these were.
Yeah, it really was.
And it was, I guess it was pre the explosion of all this stuff. So absolutely. Nobody knew how big it was all going to get.
Nobody thought Iron Man was going to be anything. Yeah. And, then it made $100 million its opening weekend, and we all know where he is today.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Arguably the most popular Marvel hero right now.
So did you grow up a lifelong Marvel fanboy?
I've grown up a lifelong fan of superheroes in general. Yeah. I mean, I'm just as big a fan of like Batman and Superman. But yeah, I mean, I certainly now know a lot more about Marvel. Yeah. Just because I worked there for 7 years, and you kind of that comes with the territory. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'm just a huge fan of superheroes in general. Star Wars, all that geeky stuff, Lord of the Rings.
That's awesome. Chris, I know we're going to ask you to come back a million times because you have so much interesting perspective and so many ways in. I think we are, we've been friends for so long, and we've worked together in a million different ways, but I know that I think we're kindred spirits, and we have a lot of shared sort of like we're fans of this stuff, which is awesome. But I want to,
my favorite. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So go ahead.
I was going to say my favorite is like when you would come up to me like at shows and be like, so why is Iron Man not good?
Yeah.
I tried.
Yes.
I did everything.
I know.
Yeah.
Because that's all like the Indiana Jones stuff that never happened at Lucas. Like it sticks with me, like it just breaks my heart.
My life for a long time, and then it's just gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it's easy to wish this stuff, hard to build it and hard to make it, and then hard to get people to care about it. And I know how expensive it is to build these things, and then it's like a moving target. You don't know if the audience is going to be there for this. And I'm sure we're going to talk about some Spider-Man games today that were incredible, but we're just there on the sales, and then that sort of sends everybody back to kind of think about whether they're going to invest in the next one, right?
I guess so.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. I don't really want to get into sales and stuff like that because honestly I don't really know.
Yeah.
I was never really privy to sales information and that sort of stuff.
Right.
But there was definitely it was always fighting the licensed game suck perspective. You know, like the kind of just.
Well, that is interesting because I personally, and I've said this on the record before, I think Spider-Man is the best video game character. I don't think there is a cooler character than Spider-Man because just moving is awesome. And just whether it's a 2D one or it's a 3D one like Spider-Man 2 or the Ultimate Spider-Man, just super fun to move as this character. And then if you can inject the right amount of storytelling and gameplay, you've got a recipe for huge success. So it's always been a question for me, like, why aren't there more? Like, one thing that I've always thought about is we have comic issues that come out every month. Why hasn't there been an episodic, action-oriented Spider-Man game that's cut up a little bit and we get new content on a regular basis that's kind of almost paralleled or tied to storytelling that we get in another medium? Chris?
Yeah, well, it's a lot more. It's more work to make a video game than it is to make a comic book. Not that a comic book isn't a lot of work, as it is.
Yeah.
But a comic book is somebody writing something, somebody drawing something, somebody coloring something. Editors and all that. It's more than just 2 or 3 people, but it's not 100 people. like a AAA game's going to take you. We get pieces of what you're talking about, like with the Batman Telltale games and Guardians Telltale games and stuff like that. But in terms of like just an action open world kind of thing, yeah, that'd be cool to see. I think it all comes down to sales and. If Spider-Man could somehow become Grand Theft Auto Online, there you go. I think then
right. Well, I mean that's because you build the world, you've built New York, you've modeled it, you put your characters, you just sort of focus instead of throwing all of the villains into your story, you slice it up into pieces, and you have like here's your 3 or 4 hour piece on the Lizard, and here's your 3 or 4 hour piece on the Vulture, and. Anyways, that's a big deal. Let's talk about games that actually got made. The first thing I'm going to ask you is your favorite Spider-Man video game of all time. Do you have one?
I have 2. It's really hard for me to say, and it's not the one everyone else says. It seems the common answer is Spider-Man 2, which I like, but I'm not in love with it like a lot of people are.
Yeah. Is it the balloons, Chris? It's the balloons.
Partly. I could get into the whole thing about Spider-Man 2 if you want to, and maybe we will. Yeah. But just to answer your question, I think the most important and the one that really made me an even bigger Spider-Man fan than I was the Neversoft game in 2000.
Yeah.
That was huge. That was, I would call, his first great game. He had, a couple arguably good games. Like some people say he had none at that point.
Yeah.
But there's a few that I liked at that point anyway. But that, just like you were saying with the web slinging earlier, even though you were swinging into the sky most of the time in that game and, attaching to clouds and whatnot, just the feeling you got of going from here to here to here to here, that, I'd never felt that before in a video game. And that was pretty revolutionary. It was like a love letter to the Spider-Man IP in general. It had a lot of great villains in it. It had an awesome ending when, spoiler alert for a 18-year-old game, but at the very end, Dr. Octopus and Carnage come together, so you're escaping a big Carnage version of Dr. Octopus, which was really cool. So that was awesome. And then my other favorite would be one that I worked on, Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's probably the biggest kind of love letter to Spider-Man, just because of all the kind of alternate universe takes and you had all the actors from the cartoons in it. Neil Patrick Harris even was in there.
Yeah.
Christopher Barnes, Dan Gavosdin from Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Josh Keaton was the Spidey at the time. That was just a joy to work on. You even got Spider-Man versus Juggernaut and Deadpool.
Yeah.
Which is weird, but
was Nolan North Deadpool in that one?
He was. Yeah.
and it was terrific. That I love that
Yeah.
game. That's absolutely near the
Yeah, I
top
do
for
too.
me too. Yeah, incredible game. I feel like Spider-Man went through eras, and there's some baton sort of passing or torch passing as we move to different studios. Neversoft, they did more. They did two, right? They did a.
They did one. The second one was actually Vicarious Visions that
Okay.
was using their engine,
Gotcha,
I believe is
gotcha.
how that worked.
So
Yeah.
Vicarious got the handoff from
Yeah.
Raven on Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and
That's true.
And they were sort of this studio that could pick up a piece and just build something cool with it, right? I think
Yeah.
they even did that with Mysterio's Menace on the Game Boy Advance. They didn't do the previews.
That sounds right. I couldn't tell you for sure there, but yeah, I think they did do that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Vicarious Visions. So, but there was the Neversoft era, and then Treyarch, who made our aforementioned Spider-Man 2. They had a nice long run with Spider-Man
did.
as well.
Well, they had like 2.5 games. They had Spider-Man 2. They had the original movie game, which I also think is really great. And then they were like half involved with Web of Shadows, which was actually probably more like a third involved. Shaba Games was the main developer.
Yeah. Also a pretty solid Spider-Man experience as well.
I love that game. Yeah.
It was you were two characters in that one for a while, right? And
you were Spider-Man in either his traditional suit or his black suit, and that affected your powers and your attitude.
You were kind of like a vampire.
Yeah.
You were a little bit more of a badass in the black suit.
You're definitely more of a badass. You were prototype. You're
Yes.
the prototype character in the black suit, basically.
Wasn't Moon Knight or something like that in that game?
Moon Knight was in that game. Yeah,
there was lots of great cameos. I enjoyed Web of Shadows.
Luke Cage.
Luke Cage. I feel like I play these Spider-Man games. I obsess over them, and I just love swinging around to every objective. And then I beat them, and then I still keep playing them because it's just hard to let go of the, just the navigation. It's just so much fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, the other Treyarch game, which is a standout in all of these Spider-Man titles, is Ultimate Spider-Man. That was phenomenal with Brian Michael Bendis, I think, writing the story, right?
Yes. That was, as I understand it, he wrote that whole story. And at the time, this was later kind of adjusted, but at the time it was actual canon for the comic book series going on. They did actually adapt that. I think it was around 2010 or so. They did actually adapt that to a comic, and it was a little different, but it was still basically the same kind of story.
They were making fun of the balloon missions, I think, in that game as well.
It was an easy thing to do.
I think they were.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Oh,
the thing about that game was it was so beautiful. It was like, a Mark Bagley drawing coming off the screen and you playing in a comic book. Like they had like the whole panel thing going on. It was a really beautiful game.
It was gorgeous. I loved Ultimate Spider-Man. But Spider-Man 2 is the one that I think is cited a lot as the best Spider-Man game ever made.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think that it's the web swinging, pure and simple. It's fantastic. It's a very hardcore gamer mechanic.
Yep.
Which is a lot of the reason that we haven't seen it much since.
Yep.
It never really got past that because it was so good for us hardcore gamers. Problem was, if you hand the controller to like someone who just kind of likes Spider-Man and kind of likes video games, they're just going to bounce all over the place and not do really well.
Right.
I was told that was the reason that it kind of changed because Ultimate was much different. And that was my actual biggest problem with that game was everything else is better.
Yeah.
But the web swinging is noticeably a downgrade.
Yeah, they simplified it all, right? Yeah.
But yeah, the web swinging. I reviewed that game in the official PlayStation magazine, not that issue, but
yeah.
And I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, which I know sounds low to a lot of people. But the way I justified that was it was a 5 out of 5 for the web swinging and a 2 out of 5 for everything else because the combat wasn't that good.
Yeah.
It was bad adaptation of the story. It had one really great moment with Mysterio where just like he was like a joke character and you just punch him once and he dies. That was like the kind of really fun moment. But yeah, I mean, I thought it could have been so much better. I thought it was like the best tech demo I've ever seen in a game.
Right.
And then the game around it was good.
Yeah.
It was fine.
Yeah.
But it could have been so much better. And I'm hoping that Insomniac's game is that and everything that's been great since.
Yes.
and then you'll have the ultimate game that Spider-Man can be.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about Insomniac's game for sure. And now that you've got this insight and you've worked with developers that have, taken the mantle and the responsibility of Spider-Man, I want to hear from that. We went from the Treyarch era. Shabba Games had it for a while. Then this company that was kind of anonymous. They weren't huge out there, but they had been working in games for a while. But Activision had made them a studio that kind of worked on other things. But Beanox took the reins of Spider-Man for Shattered Dimensions, Edge of Tomorrow, and did they do Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2?
They did. It's the Edge of Time.
Edge of Time, right. Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow was the Tom Cruise
That's
movie.
right, yes. Edge of Time. And Shattered Dimensions just blew us all away. And then Edge of Time was like a quarter of Shattered Dimensions. It just didn't have the...
Yeah, well, it had a lot less time to be made, and it actually...
Which is perfect for the title.
In terms of like story, it's one of the better Spider-Man games. There's a huge plot hole in it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into that. There's a huge plot hole in that story. But Peter David wrote the whole thing.
That's amazing.
It's actually pretty rare for a writer to write the whole thing. They're normally like they write really important scenes and they do creative direction and that sort of thing. But Peter David wrote the whole thing, and it was a really good Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2099 story. It just didn't have everything else, so everyone thought it was half the game.
It was kind of like The Force Awakens 2 in a way.
Yeah.
After the first one came out, right? Like the first one of the first of Force Awakens, just like, oh my God, this is amazing. But they could fix a couple things. And then they did fix a few things in Force Awakens 2, but then it was like half the game. And that's kind of the way that I felt with Edge of Time as well.
It was a pretty short game too.
Yeah.
It was a pretty short game. But I thought the interaction, they did a really rare thing. They got Christopher Daniel Barnes and Josh Keaton in the sound booth together. And they had them like interacting with each other, like in the sound booth together. Usually it's like, you do yours over here, I'll do mine over here, and then they'll put them together and it'll sound like we're in the same room. They actually were. And they have a really good banter throughout the game.
The two Spider-Men?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so good. And then
it's also all inside. That's one of its biggest it's all inside.
That's true. And I remember Edge of Time bugging the hell out of me because I had to kind of do all these flying sequences where I'm whipping through fans. And I kept just falling and flying, and I kept doing that mission over and over again. I'm like, come on, let's mix this up a little bit. But Beanox is pretty damn solid. And I read the chat, and Blake also let me know that I called it Force Awakens, and it's Force Unleashed, and that was my bad. And I'm sorry, Chris. I know you caught that too. But
no, I didn't catch that, and I hear people say the opposite all the time too. Like, did you like episode 7, The Force Unleashed? And it's like
they're close. So Beanox goes off and does the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, which were okay movies. They should have been better. I feel like what's the actor's name again? I forget his name.
Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, Garfield did a pretty good job as our Peter Parker.
Yeah, I was fine with him. The suit in the second one was great.
Yeah.
But the movies themselves, I'm glad we moved on from those.
Yeah. Too much spectacle and CG and all that stuff. But I think they did an all right job building games around those properties, certainly taking on more technology that was available to them. They were fun, they were solid and shiny, but they didn't feel like they moved the needle, right? They didn't push the franchise or the gaming sort of levels forward for us.
Yeah, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the last movie game I can personally think of. Mm-hmm. Like, we used to get them all the time. Like every action movie gets a big game, and the Amazing Spider-Man 2 especially came out like very much at the end of that trend.
Yeah. Apart from the Lego stuff.
Oh yeah,
we still get the Lego games.
Lego it basically owns that idea now.
Yeah, and there was my favorite thing about the Amazing Spider-Man 2 was that you could play as Stan Lee, and you could they had a really nice sequence where Peter interacted with.
That was the first one.
Oh, was that the first one?
Stan was a character in the second one.
That's right.
Owned a comic shop. Yeah. But in the first one, I got to write some of his lines.
Some of Stan Lee's lines?
Yeah.
Holy crap!
There's part of that where Stan is saying, I'm totally gonna tweet about this.
Yeah.
And that was me.
Oh my God, that's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but in Spider-Man 2, you could, or Amazing Spider-Man 2, you could swing around as Stan Lee, and I thought that was a pretty exhilarating way to celebrate the guy. You know, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. He's I think he's all dapper in a suit and everything for some reason. I don't know why we dressed him up like that, but
I like that a lot. But let's go back to the 2D roots of Spider-Man. And Blake, I think there's some Atari 2600
Nice.
footage in here. We got introduced to Spider-Man, and you're younger than me, Chris, but we got introduced to Spider-Man as a video game character very early in the history of video games. And I remember I bought this game, and it cost me money, real money. And I played it for hours, and I thought it was cool. But what is it about Spider-Man that makes him resonate and makes him a good character?
Oh wow. I think it all comes down really well. Okay, the superficial thing is his powers are really cool.
Yeah.
You know, like no one had ever really just crawled up a building before him. No one had ever probably people had grappling hooks. That's not true. People had slung through the city, but not in the same way.
Yes.
So the powers are cool, but I think at the end of the day, it's the Peter Parker-ness of it all, the relatability to the character that everyone has. And, you know, I enjoy reading Peter Parker as much as I enjoy reading whatever Spider-Man is doing to save the day. So
yeah,
I think that is kind of the heart of it right there.
We have moved on, obviously, to 3D Spidey games in a big way, and there's fighting games and there's Lego games. We'll talk a little bit about those as well. But 2D, I still feel, and we're going to be running a buried treasure that's sort of on this line later in the show today. But I feel like 2D and Spider-Man is still a match made in heaven, just like our last Metroid Samus Returns was just one of my favorite games of last year. Do you think we'll ever see 2D Spider-Man games again, or is that done? Were there enough made?
You know, it's probably mostly done. I don't know what's in the plan for them right now.
Yeah.
I will say in the DS era, there were some overlooked gems. It's funny you mentioned Metroid because they were Metroidvania kind of games. The Web of Shadows DS game and the Shattered Dimensions DS were both really good games by Grip Tonight. I actually made a YouTube video about them recently.
What's your channel? Because I've watched some of your videos. You're fantastic. You really I mean, you know so much about this stuff. So let everybody know your channel.
Yeah, it's youtube.com/cbake76, CBAKE76,
which is
also my Twitter.
Yeah, your Twitter handle.
Yeah.
And so we'll put all that stuff in the description after the show. But yeah, make sure you check out his YouTube channel. It's awesome. You're a great narrator, and you've got a lot of wisdom, and you know, there's some unique vantage point as a fanboy who got to make this stuff. It's great. So Grip Tonight made us some cool. Now I have to go and dig into my library.
Yeah, they're only like $10. They're only like $10-15. So you know, get them while they're still cheap. But yeah, they're like 4 hours each. They're not gonna take a whole lot of time to beat.
Yeah.
But the combat is so good in those. And, you know, it's your typical kind of, you know, beat a boss, then you can access this area you couldn't access before, go backtrack a little bit, you know, the classic kind of Metroid Castlevania.
Awesome. That's music formula to my ears. Is there a favorite 2D Spider-Man game that you have?
Maximum Carnage.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. Maximum Carnage came at a time when I grew up liking Spider-Man and watching cartoons and stuff like that. Maximum Carnage hit around the same time as the 90s Fox show. And both of those are what like really made me pay attention to the character and his universe beyond just being a cool guy who swings around a lot.
Yeah.
You know, the gameplay's pretty plain, but you know, it's a solid beat 'em up, and it has a really good presentation style where it actually adapts panels from the comics.
Don't you find when you go back to 2D games and you know, we've been making a lot of documentaries, like we did this thing on Metroid, and we've done some Fire Emblem stuff, but I find, and I've had this in conversation with a lot of you know, peers and contemporaries as well, is like that 2D sprite-based stuff. It just ages so well. It still looks great, it's still beautiful work in comparison to like Spider-Man 1 on PlayStation 1 is a killer game. It's awesome, and there's so much you can appreciate about it. the art does not
Does not hold up.
You know, the big
No.
globby sort of pinata
Yeah.
hands. And
Black Cat's breasts are triangles that point out.
yes.
It's kind of embarrassing. Yeah. I mean, I think in general, yeah, the 16-bit era, I think, has some of the best looking stuff that you can go back to and play and still have a good time with.
Yeah.
I mean, especially, talk about 2D art that's beautiful, and Spider-Man, the Capcom stuff that they did for Marvel versus Capcom and Marvel Superheroes and all that. That the animation is superb.
It's incredible. And
yeah, it really holds up today even.
I mean, those games are just like candy to me, like I'm not a diehard, like I play them competitively or whatever, but when I play the Marvel versus Capcom stuff, it is just divine. You get lost in this flash. Like you just cannot believe what your eyes are taking in, it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Especially if you like these characters.
Do cool stuff, and yeah, that's what I love about those games too. I'm not a big fighting game guy myself, but like you said, I worked on Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and I poured my heart and soul into that game as much as I could, and I got to do stuff like pick the costumes everybody wore as alternates and stuff like that, and just basically my job at Marvel, I don't think I actually said was but to approve things. So like, does Spider-Man look right here?
That's
and yes
awesome.
or no, he doesn't. You need to do this to make him look right. Like that's the very basic kind of description of what the job was.
So who approved you approving things? Because that sounds like an amazing position, but also one with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, when I worked at LucasArts, I met a producer there named Justin Lambros, who actually is
awesome.
Recently worked on the Guardians of the Galaxy game.
Yep.
At Telltale. But yeah, at the time he was the VP at Marvel, and he liked me when I worked at LucasArts, and he knew that I knew this stuff, and he knew that I think about games and the way that games should be thought about.
Yep.
To try to make them better.
Yep.
And so he actually came to me, and at the time I was like, I'm at LucasArts. Star Wars is my favorite thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's okay. But you can have many loves, my friend.
Yeah, but and I was trying to get into game development at LucasArts at the time, and that just wasn't happening. So I was like, I'll try this Marvel thing out, and so I moved from San Francisco to LA, and was there for like 7 years.
That's amazing. That's awesome. You've worked with so many developers, and I think this is appropriate as we kind of sort of dovetail into talking about Insomniac's game and the responsibility that they have. And I talked to Brian Intihar at E3 last year about that, because there's been a lot of great games. We've just listed off, 20 great Spider-Man experiences here that are all still worth playing. But what do developers invariably have to have? What kind of qualities and what kinds of passion do they have to show you guys when you were at Marvel that you affirmed that they're going to be the right people to do this kind of stuff?
Well, I personally didn't have much say in how the developers were chosen. That was more of an Activision call, but you could always tell kind of early on how great a game was going to turn out, kind of by the passion and the just kind of early concepts and everything. The Shattered Dimensions concepts were really creative and really interesting. They went through several kind of conceptual stages. It wasn't really what it was at the beginning. Probably can't really talk about that, but it's really. I highly recommend getting in the game industry and being a developer and seeing how things change. It's so cool.
Yeah,
so cool.
It is cool. Absolutely.
Yeah, but yeah, it's cool just seeing how that all happens.
Now,
and yeah.
Did you? Brian Intihar used to be a part of the journalism pool. Did you work with him?
He was a coworker. He was literally a coworker. He's a friend of mine. The night they announced that game, I was like, Brian, are you on this? And he's like, yeah, I'm creative director. What?
That's amazing. So he was at US PlayStation Magazine as well?
No, he was at EGM.
At EGM, okay.
There's a PlayStation Magazine. Yeah. We were, down the hall, and we talked to each other all the time. We were like the people who played sports games in the office.
Yeah.
A lot of people, not a lot of non-sports games players. So we did a lot of playing Madden together, often for review and baseball games and stuff like that. It's funny. I remember when I left OPM in 2004. I told Brian I had a job opportunity in LA, and he was like, "Is it Activision for Spider-Man?" Because he knew I was such a big Spider-Man fan. It wasn't, and that job didn't come to be, but eventually LucasArts did. So
it is amazing that the how windy the paths are through all of this
really
stuff.
Is.
Yes.
It really is.
Have you had a chance to talk to him about what Insomniac is doing now with Spider-Man? And I know you've done some videos dissecting the trailer and all that stuff. Is it in good hands? Does this feel like the Spider-Man game you want?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everything I've seen, I absolutely love, and it seems like, they're Sony is super behind, putting all the resources necessary behind this to make this the best Spider-Man game ever, and I'm frankly at this point I'll be disappointed if it isn't. I really think they stand a very good shot of being the very best Spider-Man game that we can expect, and I'm really happy for my friend Brian for helping to pull that all together.
Yeah, that's such an amazing company too. The fact that Insomniac has been this independent force with all of this, experimentation and great titles and huge AAA and just great people all the way.
Totally.
You've worked with them too closely, because especially through your PlayStation.
I've known James Stevenson maybe even longer.
Yeah.
I never worked with him, but he was at Cinescape magazine.
Amazing.
Like 2000, 2001, something like that. And we would meet at press events and just kind of hang out, and he's come a long way himself.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's a great fit. I'm super, super psyched for this. Would you say, what do you think has been the most inventive? I guess we're handing out the Spider-Man Game Awards right now, but what was the most inventive Spider-Man? I keep thinking that Shattered Dimensions deserves a little more recognition for what they did,
Inventive in terms of like gameplay or story, or what do you mean exactly?
I guess a little bit of both, or maybe there's a separate category in our Spider-Man Awards for gameplay and a special category for concepts or storytelling.
I think Neversoft for its just overall great Spider-Man experience. That they, the way they did 3D motion, I would say was pretty inventive.
I just, we talked about N64 games yesterday, and I played a little Wave Race, and it hit me that 21 years ago when that game came out, we had never played anything like that before.
Right.
And Spider-Man was just like that. We had never played Spider-Man like that before. It was mind-blowing when that thing came out. You're absolutely right.
And then, Spider-Man 2 perfected that. To the point that hasn't been surpassed yet. So that's a Spidey award, I guess.
Yeah.
I think Shattered Dimensions, just the sheer amount of Spider-Verse. Literally, the Spider-Verse. There was a comic story a few years ago called Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
And Dan Slott wrote that. He also wrote Shattered Dimensions, and
love Dan
Slott. Before that Spider-Verse was announced, I actually talked to Dan, and he was like, "Yeah, we're gonna do this thing called Spider-Verse. It's basically Shattered Dimensions, but just blown out times a million." And I was like, "Wow, that sounds awesome." So that was a pretty cool idea, and just the love that went into that, and all the voice actors and everything that we kind of talked about. You give me some time, I could come up with a whole list of the Spidey Awards. We could do a whole show.
I don't think this has to be the last time we get you on the show talking about Spider-Man, man. And I think a Spider-Man Awards thing would be amazing. But I want to talk a bit right now, because I know a lot of people, and I have this question all the time, like, what would it take to get a Spider-Man set of all of these titles together? Because the rights keep moving around, and the developers keep moving around, and there's different characters attached to some of these things. Will they only ever exist because of the way that the rights have been filtered out in the original platforms on the cartridges and discs that they came out?
Never say never, but I would say that's highly likely.
So unfortunate. Because so many.
Maybe someday Parker Brothers gets the rights back to Spider-Man and they can re-release that 2600 game that we really want.
So first of all, somebody has to get the rights to Parker Brothers,
I
build
think
the
Hasbro
company.
actually has the rights to Parker Brothers.
Oh my God.
Which, by the way, Parker Brothers, what better company to put out a Spider-Man game?
Yeah.
There's only one Parker, but still.
Yes, that's true. It's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so according to Chris Baker, the Spider-Man game, what's it called? Is there a subtitle to Insomniac's game, or is it just Spider-Man?
It is Marvel's Spider-Man.
Marvel's Spider-Man.
Yeah.
According to Chris Baker, he's said it right here on the show. You heard it. You can quote him everywhere around the internet. Go right ahead. Write your stories. Marvel's Spider-Man is going to be the best Spider-Man video game ever made, right?
I think I said I'd be disappointed if it's not, but yeah.
Not to put the spotlight.
I will say that though, just for the sake of the sensationalistic headline that you need your clickbait or whatever.
We're creating clickbait right now. That's awesome. Blake, has anybody been asking any questions or anything like that? We've got live viewers that are watching in here, Spidey fans, true believers out there that might have a question.
Someone wants to know if Bruce Campbell's in the new game.
Ah, fantastic question. And I don't know, neither of us can answer that really. Is Bruce Campbell in the new game? We don't know.
Be cool.
It would be cool.
I don't know. I don't know anything more than you guys know.
Yeah, it would be
that
cool.
Abundantly clear. A lot of people ask about release date. I don't know when it's coming out.
Yeah, they've been very coy about that, haven't they?
Yeah.
You heard God of War is April 20th.
I did, yeah. And that actually, I've been saying the past, month or so, like, they could surprise us as early as late March, but I think it's probably going to be closer to fall. September is my guess, but
PlayStation had a bit of a bummer year last year. Like they had some good games, but they didn't have like the boom, like they didn't just like drop it all on us. This could be that year though. Do you feel like we're going to get this?
God of War and Spider-Man alone are huge.
Do you think Last of Us 2 comes out this year? Do you think Ghost of what is it? Sushi? I can't remember the name.
The thing is, I'm so excited about those two games specifically that I'm not even thinking about Last of Us. Yeah, I guess that's coming. Yeah, sure.
It's crazy, right?
Last year was overall for gaming, last year was one of the best we've ever seen, I think, and this could even be better.
So Marvel is now going, and I know you don't work there now, but you work with them because you're working with Zen on the Marvel pinball stuff, and these guys, like the Zen pinball games, are incredible. And you worked with them when you were at Marvel, I guess, right?
Yeah, actually, when I was at Marvel, I did a lot of design work on them, actually, which was pretty fun. But my end of the day job was to approve everything. But I got to do things like in the Infinity Gauntlet table. I was like, you got the Reality Gem. Why not just go all out with it? You're a video game. Turn the screen upside down when you use the Reality Gem.
That's
so
awesome.
The Reality Gem's in play. You're playing pinball upside down.
That is incredible.
That's
I have to tell you, those Marvel tables are my favorite tables, and this is how. I used to bicker with Scott Jones, my colleague here on Review, who you know through the journalism. He would say, why are we playing video game pinball? Why are we reviewing these things? I said, I love them. They're so relaxing, and they're so cool.
Yeah.
And I've always loved them. I loved them on the 2600. I loved Flipnik on the PlayStation 2. But the Zen pinball are the best, and I love the Marvel stuff the best. I would buy them on the iOS platform. Every time I'd get an Android device to review, I'd buy them all again on an Android. They'd send me codes. I'd play them on the PlayStation machine. I had them on, so they're like all across everything, and they just sent me codes for the Switch version as well.
Yeah,
and they're incredible tables. But the Marvel stuff is definitely my favorite.
Yeah, they also did Back to the Future, E.T., Jaws recently as a Universal pack, which are all pretty great. There's a bunch of Star Wars stuff out there.
The Star Wars ones are good too.
Yeah, those are great too. I will say, I'm contracting with Zen now. I'm not like a full employee or anything, but I love this company. It's a fantastic company, and there's nothing I played more after it came out than the Marvel pinball games.
You go back to them, right?
They're so replayable, and there's a good competitive. You have friends playing.
Yep.
It's like a total battle for best score kind of thing. I think even early on, you and I were
Well, I think it was your tweets because you were talking about these things so much, and we were posting scores, and I remember John Davison was involved in some of this stuff, and there's other people that you just know across the industry that are, you know, bragging, and you're like, well, okay, I'm coming up.
Spider-Man writer Dan Slott, who is soon ending his years-long run to move to Iron Man, but Spider-Man writer Dan Slott, you know, in a few years ago, I don't know where he is now, but he was like number 100 in the world in Xbox 360 Spider-Man pinball.
That's incredible. That is amazing.
He was way up there, like just unapproachable for me. Like I think I'm pretty good at that game, but Dan Slott was taking breaks from writing your Spider-Man comics to play Spider-Man pinball and kick everybody's ass.
I guess he feels like that's a harmless but you know, if you're one of those people that puts a quarter down and plays forever, Dan, you're not writing your comics, my friend.
No, actually, he told me once one thing he loves about the game is you can just pause it and come back later. Yeah, and you know, you get like a nice 3, 2, 1 countdown to prepare you. You're not gonna get your ball out necessarily right away. So
are you psyched now? Marvel is saying they're going back full on into console game development, because there was a big chunk. I mean, pretty much after you left. Yeah,
after I left, there was a lot of.
It's like, what the hell are you doing, Marvel? You have like the Avengers movie. I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of people are going to your movies. Where are your video games, man? And now they're back. Now they're. Does that make you feel good? Does it make it feel?
Yeah, I'm excited. I wish Bill Roseman and his team all the best there. You know, I'm excited to see what Avengers Project's all about. I really have no idea. Yeah. I would guess like a 3D action game, but who knows at this point? We just have that trailer. Yeah. Of course, Spider-Man's gonna be great. Yeah, I don't even know what else is in the pipeline at this point.
I hope a ton, because.
Yeah, I hope so too, and I kind of think there will be. Yeah. I kind of think we're in a new kind of renaissance for Marvel games.
Yes.
But just have to see.
Blake, did we get any questions for Chris? We talked about a lot of stuff, my friend.
Some people want to know how long Sony's going to own the rights to the game.
Oh, I think this is an important question. I
don't think we know that. Yeah, those. Unless they come out in a press release with that kind of information, it's very secretive in that regard. I have no idea.
Do you have thoughts as a former Marvel employee and as a lifelong Spider fan?
I'm sure they have enough time for like a trilogy,
right?
At least.
And what about their exclusivity? Do you think that that's kind of a drag that that this wonderful game will only be available on this one platform?
To Xbox owners, it is, and Switch owners, it is. Yeah, I'd love to see it elsewhere too, but that's just not going to happen as long as it's a reason for people to buy PS4s and maybe PS5s. Yeah, I don't really see that happening.
PlayStation 5. It is time to start talking about the PlayStation 5.
Unless Microsoft buys Sony. Yeah. Maybe Disney buys them both. Who knows? That's the kind of world we're in these days.
Disney is on a shopping spree, aren't they? It's so crazy. Yeah. It's awesome. All right. Okay, my friend. I think that's not enough Spider-Man chat for me, but I think that's quite a bit of Spider-Man chat for this episode. We are going to definitely have you back if you would answer our Spidey beacon and come back and be on the show.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe talk about some Star Wars video.
I'll answer any beacon. I'll answer a bat signal.
Okay.
If you want to throw me a bat signal sometime.
All right. Well, I know I love comic book movies and comic book video games, and I know that you're right in line with all of that stuff. And well, let me get one quick thing. You're a huge Star Wars fanatic.
Yes.
Last Jedi.
Loved it.
Loved it?
You know, actually, I will say, walking out the first time I saw it, I was like, I think I like that.
Yeah.
I had some reservations. The second time, I noticed a lot more of the kind of subtlety and like my favorite joke in the whole movie is right at the beginning when there's like a porg jamming down on a lightsaber hilt. Like he's about to kill his friend.
Yes.
Like it's so subtle. I didn't even catch that.
It's so subversive.
I caught it the second time. I think a lot of people probably don't even know what it means.
Yeah.
But like he's literally on the handle, the switch of the lightsaber. If he does this instead of this, his friend who's like this, oh, what is that? It's gonna go.
They were in harm's way, those porgs, the whole time.
And then there's stuff like Leia awakens like right when Luke reunites with the Force. Like that's something I didn't notice the first time. And there's there's 5 or 6 things like that throughout the movie that if you watch really closely, it's like, oh, the timing on this is really perfect and deliberate. And I've never thought like that in a Star Wars movie before.
Interesting.
Which,
you know, you're making me recognize a point right now. We're in a kind of a similar state with Star Wars video games that we were with Marvel, apart from Battlefront. But it feels like EA, they're in a precarious situation right now. They can't afford, I think, to piss off the fans out there. But they have like things coming, and hopefully they're all fantastic. But it does feel like we're in that absence of, you know, diversity in the gameplay styles with Star Wars right now. It's either mobile.
Yeah, outside of Battlefront, we really haven't had anything since The Force Unleashed.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm dying for another just 3D action game.
Me too.
And I was hoping that for Visceral, but I guess that's not happening. And you know, I'm sure they have somewhere between 2 and 5 things in the pipeline they haven't told us about yet.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff they're considering. But yeah, hopefully 3 or something this year will give us some news.
Chris, I know when we're going to have you back. We're going to talk about Star Wars games just before the Han Solo movie comes out, or
great,
around that time frame. But Chris Baker was on the show, and he was phenomenal. Thank you so much, my friend. We will see you very soon. But right now, let's take a look back in time at Spider-Man: Mysterio's Menace. We're about to see Spider-Man all over the place with a new Spider-Man game developed for the PlayStation 4 by Insomniac. And of course, Spidey's going to be in the Avengers Infinity War. But if I'm thinking of a buried treasure with Spider-Man in it, I'm thinking of Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace, which was a Game Boy Advance cartridge. And it's definitely one of those Metroidvania type of experiences. Not as robust and not as satisfying in terms of game design as you would find in a game like Metroid or Castlevania. But it had that Spidey signature movement kind of joy, where it was just a total treat to swing around and you know, fight all kinds of goons and henchmen. And then of course you get into lots of great boss fights with all kinds of villains from the Spider-Man universe. It was just really, really fun to play. And even though you got some repetition in some of the environments, and you know, you're seeing recycled animation, it was a very special experience. It's one that I always think back very fondly on when I'm thinking of portable gaming. I had a blast playing through this title. It was developed by Vicarious Visions, and they were experts at making great games on the Game Boy Advance. It is definitely a treat, and I wish that the rights around Spider-Man were a little less messy, because there are some classic games like this one, which I would like to see either remastered or brought out for the current gen system so we could play games like this. This would be an incredible download for the Switch or onto the 3DS or something, but you're going to have to dig up either an old DS or a Game Boy Advance to be able to play it. I recommend that you do, though. Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace is something special, and it's also a buried treasure. We are back, and yes, Mysterio's Menace is an incredible game. So many great Spider-Man games, but let's talk a little bit about a new Street Fighter release. This is Street Fighter V Arcade Edition. Man, I'll tell you, it was a little weird to be a little meh about a Street Fighter release, but that's exactly what happened with Street Fighter V when it came out in 2016. It was cool, it was fun, but it just felt slight. It didn't feel like a very big, robust package. Well, that's all changed with Street Fighter V Arcade Edition. Arcade Edition is exactly what it promises on the box. This is about jumping in and having some single-player campaigns. You can play through a bunch of different arcade modes, so you can play with just the characters that were in the Street Fighter 1 game, or 2, or 3, or Alpha. Incredible idea there. And they also throw in all kinds of remastered versions of the classic themes, which is awesome. And so you get a nice big roster as well if you decide to purchase this game, which costs $40 in the States, $50 in Canada. It sort of all totals up to about 28 different fighters, and more are on the way. So you get Season 1 and Season 2 fighters. Presumably, if you bought into Street Fighter V a couple of years ago, you have purchased some of these fighters along the way. But if you've not jumped in, if you somewhat wisely decided that, look, Capcom has a history of repackaging these Street Fighter games into something a little more robust, let's hold off and wait. If you did wait, then you're going to get a nice big chunk of content for that 40 or 50 bucks. You get the arcade mode, you get this story mode, which I actually played all the way through. I played it a little bit when the first game came out, but I played it all the way through, and I had a good time. It's insane, it's crazy, but these characters are so gorgeous and so beautiful, and their super moves are amazing. All of these flashy, you know, flying through the air and fireballs all over the damn place. And, you know, the Street Fighter 5 variations of Dalsim and Zangief and Ryu and Ken and all of these different characters, I love them. I think it just looks amazing. It's so fast and so fluid. I think if I had to pick my favorite character, it's Rashid. And one of the things that I really dug about the story mode is just like in Injustice 2, which has a vastly superior story mode, by the way, you get to bounce between all of these characters and have some fun with them. I think Street Fighter V Arcade Edition is a blast. Of course, you can get super competitive in online play, and you can play ranked matches. They've got new bonus challenges. They've added an extra V trigger for those, you know, those hardcores out there that know all the minutia and know how to, you know, punish your opponents with every single different character. They've added a little bit more variety into how you can mix up your moves, so you're not going to be able to pre-guess what everybody's strategy is going to be. They're mixing it up a little bit. They've added some stuff to the training mode. There are new challenges, so you can unlock costumes, and one of the cool ones is a beautiful Joe costume, which is pretty rad. Listen, this is an amazing package. It looks and sounds beautiful. There's tons of content. Quite frankly, this is the Street Fighter V that Capcom should have released in the first place, but this is still wonderful stuff. I'm going to give Street Fighter V Arcade Edition a 9 out of 10. Yeah, I had so much fun playing Street Fighter V Arcade. I am not done with it. I have lots of leveling up to do, lots of getting my my butt kicked online, like you guys. Good comments on here. I think they flashed by a little bit, but somebody, John Matrix. Honestly, the competitive scene has killed my desire to play fighting games. Sometimes it is a bit exhausting. Also, many people commenting on the fact, Paladin 1, thinking that maybe Capcom is going to release a new version of Street Fighter V down the road. It's generally a pretty safe bet to wait a little while on these things if you want all the content collected. And you don't get every single thing collected in Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, but man, it is a jam-packed piece of software. There is a lot of fun to be had in that game for sure. I loved it. And it's been fighting game season, and I thought this is a perfect time. I wanted to revisit Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. It was I played it a little bit, but I didn't play it enough to give you guys a review. But I thought this would be a fun one to play and stream. And we've got a segment that wraps up the show every day. It's called Let's Play and Chat. And the deal is get your comments and questions into the chat here, and we'll get to them. I'm going to be kind of focused on gameplay, but I'll talk, and Blake will read. And if you've got something that you want to shoot out, some kind of comment or question about anything that's happened today, or what we're playing, or what you'd like to see next, or whatever, if you put it in all caps, it's great. It helps us out. Oh, audio issues? That's so weird. Okay, well, we're going to pause the stream and start the stream up again, and hopefully the audio is all cleared up. Okay. So weird. Okay, how do we sound right now? We're back live again. Audio probs coming back from last segment. You know, we're feeding a lot of content. Still doing it. Okay. We're trying it again. Okay, started OBS.
Let's see how it sounds.
Sounds okay. How does it sound right now? We are feeding a lot of stuff. Okay, good. We are feeding a lot of stuff into this OBS, which is, as you know, open source software. Good, great, Daniel C. Okay, fixed. Thank you, guys.
I don't know why I did that.
Yeah. I think we're taxing the system. We are building a real show. We're trying to build a real show every day. But this is Let's Play and Chat, and we are talking about, I'm playing Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, which I've been psyched to get back into. You guys go ahead and ask us anything that you want, and if you put it in all caps, we'll see it a little bit easier, okay? Same issues when starting live play. It usually happens when coming back from the recorded segments. Yes, and I don't know if there are too many outlets that are doing recorded to live and recorded to bouncing back and forth like that, but that's kind of what we want to do. So we have to figure it out. Thank you for bearing with us, and we will figure this out. Audrey on Leon, hey Vic, I got stuck on Punch Quest last night. I mean it was addictive, incredible game. Yes, that was one of the buried treasures from yesterday. But let's start a little bit. Let's play a little bit of Capcom versus. I always play the Marvel side. Capcom versus Marvel. I just am psyched to be playing as a Marvel character. And someone said there should be a Marvel versus DC game, and I believe that you are correct. I forget who said that. But absolutely that should happen, and it should be Capcom should make a game that's Marvel versus DC, and the NetherRealm people should make a game that's that's Marvel versus DC, and that would be, or DC versus Marvel, and that would be phenomenal. I'm gonna be Spider-Man and Ghost Rider, and let's do time, and let's see. I don't know how to play the intricacies of all of this stuff. What is my review of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite out of 10? I have not played it enough to be able to review it. I've played it a little bit. I wasn't a big fan of what the story stuff was, especially coming off of Injustice 2, so it kind of turned me off a little bit. I like the flashiness and the aesthetics of everything, but I felt like Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was so excellent, and they just released the Ultimate Edition not too long ago, that this didn't quite stand out as much as it should, but I still have to give this thing more time, and I know that it's been tweaked and improved over the last couple of months, as Capcom always does with their fighters. But they, and I'm a bit of a masher, as you can probably tell. I don't know all the moves and all that stuff. Okay, there's my switching out to Ghost Rider. So go ahead and ask whatever you want, and I will do my best to have an answer for you. Oh, I'm going to start the 15 minutes. Right there. So 15 minutes of Let's Play and chat. I just got Frank West taking a picture of Ghost Rider, which is kind of franchise accurate. Some pretty cool Spidey attacks right there. That was pretty fun. I'm so badass. I mean, who's going to win between Frank West and Spider-Man? That's no contest. He's trying to take pictures of me. Doesn't he know that I'm the better photographer? Burn. Right. Oh, it's Spidey versus Spidey. It's Spidey versus Tobey Maguire, Spidey. Infinity Stone. I don't know what all of these, the stone powers do yet. I know that they manipulate time and give you extra power and stuff like that. Ooh, he leveled up. I have no score for this yet. It's flashy out of 10. It's super slick and fun looking. I have to like really sit down and feel like I'm making progress. I'm going to switch out to Ghost Rider! Did anybody pick this thing up? What are their thoughts in chat? Do people play this at home and have some love to share and spread about Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite? I think it's going to be really tough. That's a great question, Leighton JT, asking about the Fox material. I got into it a little bit with Johnny, but I feel like all of the work that Fox has been putting into their television shows and their movies around X-Men and presumably Fantastic Four has now been undercut. And you really feel like the days are numbered for the actors that are playing these characters, because Marvel internally is going to come up with their own look and feel for a lot of these characters, unless they're not. Unless they're going to say, well, we admire the work that's been done by Bryan Singer and Matthew Vaughn and other people, and we're going to encompass some of that, and all of these actors are going to be along for the ride. I think the only way that happens is if Hugh Jackman is the figurehead. If they say, okay, well, Jackman's going to be in as a slightly older, more mature Wolverine in potentially the fourth Avengers movie. And I haven't heard anything. I don't know. It's total conjecture. That seems very soon as well, because it's going to take a long time for this deal to go through. But we see Disney and Marvel being incredibly aggressive with stuff like this. So, but I think if, you know, the Jennifer Lawrence and all of these actors, Fassbender and all that stuff that have been attached to these characters, is something that we're going to see as a progression going forward. It has to be led by Marvel and Disney saying, yeah, we want that, and we're going to start with Hugh Jackman as a Wolverine matchup in there, which would be incredible. I want that, you know, even though Jackman's a little older, he's incredible. I love him as that character, and you know, like, I think he's the same age as Robert Downey Jr., and I don't want him to disappear either. I want him to continue on as Iron Man. I'd like another Iron Man movie. So we'll see. It's interesting days through all of this. This might be Marvel's chance to just reboot the whole damn thing and bring in a whole suite of new, younger actors. But God, they've done so well with their casting. It's so hard to think of who else fits those roles, you know? Good question, Leighton. So I am excited to see X-Men and like the Dark Phoenix movie and the New Mutants and all that stuff, but I feel like they're going to be scrubbed at any second. I literally feel like they won't matter soon unless there's some huge announcement, you know, or they appear and they cross over into the other movies. Because I don't know if you guys have caught Legion, but that's a pretty damn cool show. Which is based on the X-Men stuff, and I think The Gifted is also a part of the X-Men universe. It's another Fox show. I haven't seen that yet, but I want to watch all of these things, but I feel like, yep, they're going to all go blip, and do sort of like extended universe to Star Wars. All right. Look at me hack and slash as I answer questions. Wow! I always love Ghost Rider. I'm not the craziest fan of his mythology and comic books and stuff, and the storytelling around it, and the movies have been cheesy fun, but not that great. But I just love the character. He's just cool, man. I love the way he looks. Who's your favorite Marvel character, and who's your favorite Marvel character in these games? See, I'm asking you questions. That's how you start. You ask a question, and then the conversation happens right there. Ryu lost. Not happy about it. Leaving the scene. He's out. It'd be hilarious if he's just not available in the game. He's just like embarrassed, face palmed, gone. Let's go to the character select screen. It's like, dude, you could play better than that. That would be an interesting way for a company to make a fighting game. It's like, if you suck at these characters, they will just leave the game. They will just go away. I'll be Iron Man, and I'm gonna be the standard colors. I am going to be, ooh, look at that. I want Black Panther, but I can't be Black Panther. Why can't I be? Is it in-game currency, or do I have it? No, I can't choose him. Oh, son of a bitch. Okay, well, I'll be Iron Man, and I will be, I don't really want to be Rocket Raccoon. I'll be Nova. Oh, where's Cap? Oh, there's Cap. I'll be Iron Man and Cap. I'll get a little Avengers play going right there. Reality.
KS has a question about the Star Wars franchise.
KS, Star Wars franchise question.
Are you worried about the future of the Star Wars franchise with all the Solo rumors and The Last Jedi polarizing?
I'm not worried about it, but I certainly wonder what the hell J.J. Abrams is going to do now. I think so much stuff was taken off the table in The Last Jedi, which made it an interesting movie. And I really liked the movie. I appreciated the movie, but I felt like it was also a bit of a slap in the face to what has come before and what we would be hyped for what is to come. But there's some great work in that movie. It almost exists, and I feel like that was Rian Johnson trying to kind of put his flag in the sand and say, well, look, my stuff is going to matter. It's not just going to be a conduit to what's next. It's going to be significant, and I feel like it is that. But it also, yeah, it makes me wonder, like, what is the significance of Episode 9 now, you know, with major characters gone and actors not around anymore to replay their roles, and it feels like a real ending, you know, Last Jedi. And as far as Solo, yeah, like I was talking with Johnny about this on our show last week. It's like Alden Ehrenreich. I always want to call him Aaron Aldenreich. Alden Ehrenreich. His only play is to be Harrison Ford. Like, he's got to, like, remember how when River Phoenix played the young Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade? He had to have some things that connected him to Harrison Ford. He had to have the scar and the smirk, and Alden Ehrenreich's got to do the same thing. Now, how much joy is that going to be for him as an actor? I guess he doesn't play him again because this is a one-off, but if his impression of Harrison Ford isn't great, that movie is in trouble. Like, that movie will be a problem. And, like, everybody involved, like, not just Ron Howard, but all the other actors, there's a lot of talent on that thing. So I'm very excited to see how that turns out. I'm also very excited to see how Episode 9 comes together.
Great opportunity.
I don't like thinking about the machinery, though. I'd rather just be like back in time and just be like with this, just this curiosity and this fire and this passion that I had between Star Wars and Empire and Return of the Jedi. Like, I was making up stories in my head about it, like, what are they going to do, and who is this character going to do that, and how they... Now I'm just like, well, what is J.J. Abrams going to write, and like, how are they going to write this thing out, and then like, business-wise, what's this going to matter? Is this playing to the right demographic, and maybe I've outgrown... And I don't like that I think like that stuff around Star Wars, you know? And I just recently watched Rogue One, which is interesting. I just rewatched it. I watched it on the 4K Apple TV, which I'm a fan of, because now they've updated a lot of the movies to either have HDR or 4K quality streams, which is pretty damn cool. And I don't know if Rogue One was in 4K or if it was just an HDR stream, but it looked amazing. And I got totally sucked into that movie. I really appreciated the build of it, the quality of it, and the story and the whole thing. I was really impressed with it as a feature. And that gives me hope. Talk about hope. That gives me hope that whatever happens, Star Wars can be reinvigorated. Like whatever happens with Solo and Episode 9, Star Wars can be reinvigorated with a new vitality and some new stories. And I feel, and I've been thinking about this a lot over the last few years, is the idea of this never-ending war is a tough thing to turn into, you know, your business, right? Like and it's an industry. Star Wars is an industry, and Disney bought the industry of Star Wars. And the idea that this war between the light side of the Force and the dark side of the Force is never going to end, and there's always going to be this battle going back and forth, is kind of depressing, you know? So that there's something about that Star Wars brand that feels finite, and the economic forces that are pushing, no pun intended, that are pushing forward on it want it to be infinite. And I don't know if those things can correlate, you know? So it's going to be interesting. Long answer. Good question.
There's more to fighting than brute strength.
Yep.
Pharaoh81 has a question about the history of EP and when you took over from Tommy as the main host.
Okay, when did I take over from Tommy? It wasn't so much that I took over. It was when I started, I wanted Tommy to be the host, and I was going to be a reporter, and I was going to go get stories and stuff. And my focus was much more on talking to people and giving them a platform and the spotlight. And I still have that. But when we were on Discovery's Science Channel, they focus tested the show. They actually went to groups of people and they tested the show, and they had feedback for us. And one of the things that they said, which I was not anticipating, was that they really liked me on camera, and they wanted me on camera more, and they wanted me to be the co-host of the show. And that was incredibly flattering, and I guess because already by that point the reviews on the run chunk of the show was the thing that everybody talked about with EP, because it was fun and honest, and Tommy and I fought in every episode, and that was all genuine and legitimate. And so people, I think they liked the dynamic of both of us, and so when they said that was really nice to hear, and you know, I said, well, of course, well, I'll start hosting, and it was awkward and challenging for me, but I enjoyed that, and then we just kept doing that, and then I was co-hosting for a chunk of time, and then, you know, things changed. He started Video Games Live, and the shows would air in some markets and not in others, and it became a situation of priorities for what he was going to focus on, and eventually he decided, look, I'm going to make more time for Video Games Live, and we were constantly re-upping and renegotiating deals, and around that time is when EP became daily, and it was like, well, how is this going to work? How are we going to make a daily thing with you working daily on your music tours and growing your new business? And so there were a lot of changes there. And I think actually one of the changes is that G4 wanted more reviews on the Judgment Day down south, and I just couldn't work out a deal with Tommy for the amount of time that all of that stuff was going to take. And so I had to kind of step up as more of a host, and if you guys remember, that was the time when I was testing with lots of different co-hosts, and that was a huge learning thing for me too. Is like we had to make these shows, and I didn't know who my co-host was, and I was nervous as hell to work with other people, but it was also really gratifying and rewarding, and it taught me a lot about hosting. And so just, I guess, from there, I just kept hosting more and more, and certainly miss co-hosts. I miss the idea of sharing the platform with other people, but unfortunately right now I don't really have a lot of a lot of those friends are not in Vancouver, and I don't have the budgets that we used to have with television contracts that I can just be hiring people all over the place. And it's tough for me to put a big call out and give people this opportunity to come in and be a part of this on just asking them for favors, because I've been an employer for so long, and so there's the alarm on that. That always takes a big chunk of time talking about EP history. Yeah, so I miss all of those folks, but all of those changes, I think, just helped me kind of understand new aspects of how to do all of this stuff, and all of these opportunities have kind of led us to this. And I don't know how you guys are feeling. I mean, we're getting your comments and feedback. People have been saying they miss the way that we've been doing the rundown as the way that we've been doing it, and frankly, we will still be doing the classic style rundowns, especially when I'm not in Vancouver or we're not in Vancouver. But the idea is to continue to grow this and to continue having fantastic, guests and people to communicate with, and creators of all stripes on the program. And I dig this. I feel like personally, I really dig this new way to put all of this material together. It's very exciting. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. We're going to have a fantastic guest tomorrow. John Riccardi is going to join us. It's not live because he's in Tokyo, but he runs a company called 8-4 and has been localizing games for a long time. We're going to talk about that, and we're also going to be talking about Monster Hunter World. Is that right? Monster Hunter World. They made a lot of Monster Hunter games. So we'll talk about that and much more. We're going to have a fun show, a fun EP live tomorrow. So please come back and join us for that. It's at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Spread the word for us. If you dig what we do, if you like our content, don't forget to hit subscribe and that little bell. And if you're so inclined, that sponsorship button too. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you soon.